and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and it's just good business.
And I'm Matt Freeman, and Scott, did you bring your piece of 8?
Sorry, I forgot it in some dude's eye socket.
Oh, that'll happen, yeah.
This week on the show, it is part 7 in our ongoing series discussing the films of Gore Verbinski. We're wrapping up Verbinski's Pirates trilogy with its absolutely triumphant conclusion. We're talking about 2007's At World's End. I've been looking forward to this one since we started this whole project, Matt, and I'm very excited to talk about it with you.
You know, weirdly, I have not, but then when rewatching it this time, I realized that I've just been wrong all this time.
Oh, thank God. Thank God I don't have to yell at you. It's such a better episode, but I don't have to yell at you.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can say why I had this reaction very succinctly, actually. I think I was just watching it wrong.
All right.
I think I just wanted it to be a certain thing. And
okay.
It wasn't that. And
well, let's definitely get into that because
yeah.
I really want to pick that apart with you. So we're going to talk all about At World's End. Then we have the results of last week's council episode about Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. So we'll read what you guys voted. And once again, Matt will chastise me for not completing the webpage with the list of all of them like I said I was going to.
But you'll do it for next time, right,
yeah,
Scott?
It's going to be next time.
Okay.
And we're going to wrap this episode up with Matt and I chatting about some of our favorite action scenes. We're going to play another top 5 game because it's fun. I like it.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, Matt, let's get into Pirates of the Caribbean: At World's End.
There was a time when a pirate was free to make his own way in the world. But our time is coming to an end.
Why should I sail with any of you? 4 of you have tried to kill me in the past. 1 of you succeeded.
Our enemies have united and vowed to destroy us.
You will fight, and all of you will die.
The pirate lords from the 4 corners of the earth.
Welcome to Singapore.
Must stand together. There's not been a gathering like this in our lifetime.
And I owe them all money.
Matt, what is this movie all about?
Captain Barbossa, Will Turner, and Elizabeth Swann must sail off the edge of the map, navigate treachery and betrayal, find Jack Sparrow, and make their final alliance for one last decisive battle.
Oh, that is such a good summary. I love it. Once again, this movie was written by Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio. It was directed, of course, by Gore Verbinski and starring Johnny Depp, Orlando Bloom, Keira Knightley, Jack Davenport. Everyone's coming back. We have Geoffrey Rush back. We have Bill Nighy back. Bill Skarsgård is in this. And then they also bring Keith Richards in. So Keith Richards shows up as well, because why the fuck not? It's Pirates 3, baby.
Right. We're just, it's all spectacle. It's just a big circus. It's great.
Yeah. All right, Matt, let's get into it. Tell me why you were watching Pirates wrong and how you figured out the right way to watch this movie.
I think I just didn't understand what the Pirates franchise was.
Okay.
And I, for some reason, expected, I don't really know. Like, I think the movie is maybe a little bit long.
Mm.
Okay, I think that's a valid criticism, and I think that, but like I remember thinking it was too complicated and the action was too unbelievable. But the thing is, like, now that I've watched all 3 of them in a row, it's like, well, the action just sort of linearly gets more and more unbelievable with each movie. But this is. It's still fun. Like, it doesn't matter if it's unbelievable. I think we commented with the last movie that there were certain moments that felt just straight up Looney Tunes, like it was a cartoon moment.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of this is doing as well. And if you understand that's what they're going for, then you can just smile and enjoy it. Like, if you expect it, some kind of like gritty, nautical battle, like realism, like, no, what are you doing? That's not what this is. So yeah, there's just, I don't know, man. I think watching all 3 movies in a row, like, recalibrated me to like, no, that this is what this is actually.
Yeah. And I definitely think it's the biggest, it's the silliest. This actually, when this movie came out, it was the most expensive movie ever made. They spent $300 million making this movie. and that has since been surpassed, of course. I forget by what exactly, but probably Justice League, Matt. I mean, all told, definitely Justice League.
Yeah,
but,
definitely.
Um,
But it grossed like almost $1 billion, which
Yeah.
at the time was walking around money.
Oh yeah. And I think you're right. I mean, I think out of all three of these, this is the one that is closest to Mouse Hunt in my head. It is like, I think you can draw a direct line between Mouse Hunt and the Pirates films in general, but I think Pirates 3 especially, this is in many ways a cartoon, but I love that just like Mouse Hunt, it also understands the need to be serious and dramatic and have close personal stakes at the same time. And I think that's something that Verbinski really, really excels at, especially in this movie. I mean, like, I kind of want to start the conversation in this movie talking about the opening sequence, because I think it's such a fascinating sequence to really pick at.
Sure.
Because it's super dark. I mean, like, I remember sitting down to watch Pirates 2, and the opening sequence of that is pretty dark too, when you like go into a prison and it's Jack Sparrow breaking into a prison, but like you're seeing birds eat the eyes out of prisoners, live prisoners, and you're seeing people dying, and like you're just like, God, this is not fucking around. And then this movie opens with a mass execution of pirates, including a child.
I mean, it's worse than I remember it, because it doesn't even seem to be a mass execution of pirates so much as a mass execution of like everyone they can get their hands on, almost full stop.
Yeah.
Like they're like, because if you listen to what they're saying in their little spiel, it's like, we've basically waived all of your rights. You have no rights, and we're executing anyone on the merest suspicion of dealing with pirates. So the people they're killing are probably just like the townspeople, and they're doing this to sort of draw out some sort of reaction, which this is sort of vague. I'm not really sure what exactly. I mean, it ultimately it leads to Barbossa deciding that they need to call the pirate court, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not that it's contradictory. It's just that it's so complicated that you kind of lose track of why certain things are happening, which I guess is one of my, at this point, more minor criticisms.
I do want to kind of try to break down the plot with you at some point, because I do agree it's unwieldy and confusing in some ways, but we'll get to that in a sec. But yeah, I mean, like, there you mentioned that there's literal Holocaust imagery in this opening, which there absolutely is. The piling up of clothing and boots from the dead people is Verbinski very intentionally summoning Holocaust imagery in here. And I mean, the 1-2 punch of the guy reading the restricted rights, like punctuated with every right he says is suspended, is punctuated by the executor pulling on the lever and people dying, and just like the beat, the back and forth beat of that. And of course, like, the writing of this is so good because it's like, it's so geared towards Americans, where it's like, it's very specifically the reading out of every right that an American knows that we have. And
right.
like it's like basically he's going down the Bill of Rights and reading all the things that we hold so dear and saying, nope, fuck you guys. So like, it's meant, like we talked in the last episode about how it was becoming clear that like pirating and piracy was in the world of this movie a symbol of freedom, and that becomes just completely textual in this movie when the pirates are freedom. The East Indian Trading Company is oppressive rule. I mean, there's even like the only democracy we see in this movie is the pirates and the way they vote to do things, where it's so like, it's so obvious, but I don't know, there's something just delightful about it.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the number of pirate ships they field at the end, it's like, okay, how many pirates are there? Like it's almost more like the pirates are the Rebel Alliance and the East India Trading Company is the Empire in terms of what we're supposed to believe about how this world is set up. And the thing is, if you just let yourself go with it, you kind of buy it. Like, I think the world building is actually not bad, because, like, for example, we do have that intro scene you just described, but then we go to Singapore, which is basically it's emphasizing this idea that, like, just like the Caribbean, the Far East is also this like uh, uh, sort of this seedy underbelly of pirates and thieves and backstabbers is like everywhere. It's all over the world. Like these are the people, and they're all working in the shadows to avoid the East India Company, whose tentacles have reached all around the globe at this point.
Sure.
So like I think it struck me before as like a weird choice to be like, why are we going to Singapore? Why do we have this huge long set piece in Singapore? I thought this was Pirates of the Caribbean. The scene isn't even necessary, but actually I think it's good world building. It's setting up a few characters. It's establishing certain dynamics. It's also just a fun set piece.
I mean, it's Jabba's palace. Like there's so much of this that is Return of the Jedi, right?
It's Jabba's palace, exactly. Yes.
And so we open in our third movie with a Jabba's palace scene, basically.
And they have Will in the crypt in the carbonite. I mean, I mean the water.
And I mean the whole point of the sequence is to get something to help rescue Han Solo, aka Jack Sparrow. So I mean, like it's structurally, I think they're aware of what they're doing here. But no, I agree with you. Like it's so fun to think Singapore, and you're like, wait a minute, and then like in your head you just start calculating how long it would have taken to sail from the Caribbean to Singapore, and it would have just been an absurd amount of time. Months and months.
Right. Yeah. They would all just be older. Yeah.
But no, I mean, I love that it expands out that. I love the world building gets really weird. Like it's so funny that in the first movie we talked about the Pirates Code as if it was this thing that was really more of a guideline. And in this movie, no, it's a big giant book. And if you don't follow it, the Rolling Stones will immediately execute you. It's fun and it's different and it's weird. And if you get on board with it, you just ride this movie. And that's a lot of what this movie is doing. I think I read that Verbinski said that the first movie was really kind of a character study movie, character focused. The second movie was really plot focused. And I think that's a fair assessment. There's a lot of plot in that second movie. Mm-hmm. And in this third movie, he was hoping to kind of do a combination of the two things. And I do think he succeeded here. I mean, I think there's a lot of character moments in this movie that work really well. And I think the plot stuff, there's a fair amount of it here. And it's the problem with the plot with me is that they got so wound up in everyone kind of backstabbing each other that you just kind of lose track of who is currently doing what and why.
And you lose track of what their true motivation is versus what they're telling someone their motivation is in a scene, because they might be lying. But I don't think, that's one of the things where I remember the conversation between Jack Sparrow and Beckett being like inscrutable to me when I first watched this. And this time I was just like, I think it's because I'd watched it twice, honestly, and so I knew where things were going. I was like, okay, I can follow what elements of this are meant to be misleading and what Jack's true loyalties are. And I do think I think maybe there's a case to be made that it is like pretty impenetrably complicated if you're watching it just the first time through, because unless you know that Jack is ultimately like a good guy who's going to make the right decision, you're not really sure if he's just planning on screwing everybody over. And then it's hard to like, you have to know where the character is mentally to care about them. And I think that was my problem. I mean, this might only be the second time I've seen this movie. And so I think it's a valid criticism of a movie to say that you like have to watch it twice, but not the strongest criticism in the world.
I think the moments of Jack's, like I think in the second movie, the moments where Jack was screwing over people, but inevitably going to make the right decision were much more clear than in this movie, where sometimes it feels like he's just like taking advantage of the current situation and he doesn't have a deeper plan. And it's just like, which, I mean, that is part of Jack, where he's just kind of bumbling around. And I think that the great irony of Jack Sparrow is he seems like he's bumbling around like an idiot. And then the thing he does works perfectly. Like when he uses the cannon to launch off of Beckett's ship, and also simultaneously takes their central mast out. Like it's a thing where like he seems like an idiot that doesn't know what he's doing, but he always seems to know what he's doing. And the central irony of that character I love, but it does get a little confusing. I think that the biggest strike against it is that Beckett's goal is the most confusing, I think, because we talked about how it's obvious that Beckett is trying to kill a bunch of pirates to get them to a point of desperation where they start singing their song and then gathering the Brethren Court. To what end, though? Like, it seems like, and maybe this is just the character's flaw, is that he knows and fears some other power out there, and he's trying to draw it out to destroy it.
Yeah, it's just like he has to rule everything. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
he has to impose his iron will over everything.
Yeah.
I wasn't really sure if there was something else that he was getting at, right?
Yeah.
Like
it doesn't actually make sense for him to kill the Kraken outside of just as a symbol of the dying world of freedom and piracy and like mystic. Like, this is very much the modern versus the old, right? The mythic versus the new, and the Kraken has no place in this new world order, and so we must kill him. But I mean, like, I get that, and I love the symbol. Like, I love the scene where Barbossa and Sparrow are seeing the death of the Kraken as like a perfect symbol of how their place in the world is shrinking and dying, and if they don't fight up against it, there will be no place for them anymore.
Yeah.
But like, he's working with like fish people, so like it isn't like, I don't know, like I it doesn't make a lot of sense from a purely like rational perspective.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to do a patch job on it, I would have thrown in a line about how the Kraken is going rogue and taking out ships willy nilly just because it feels like, and you had to put it down or something. But yeah, I mean, you're that's the sort of thing that didn't really occur to me. But I mean, I think you're right. I think when the movie the both strength and problem with the movie, I guess, is like 100,000 things happen in this movie.
Yes, they do.
Like you can just forget whole like parts of the movie. Like I think when I was watching it, I sent you that meme of like Gandalf saying, "I have no memory of this place," because I just there were large swaths of the movie that I had forgotten. Like a lot of the stuff surrounding Jack in Davy Jones's locker, which is a fascinating sequence.
I love it so much.
I had just memory hold completely, and I include the parts where like they're trying to get there and then they're trying to get back, like
where they
think,
tip the ship.
Yeah, where they tip the ship over. Like a lot of it, I think I just probably wasn't watching it with my full attention the first time, and I'd effectively never seen it before, honestly.
Sure.
But no, like I love that. Like that's. There was definitely a decision made at some point where they were like, all right, we're going to have a big chunk of this movie that's just Johnny Depp just being wacky.
Yeah.
And like I want Verbinski to make a whole movie in the tone of the locker scene where there's like this eerie high-pitched droning sound in the background, and everything's too bright.
Yeah, all the colors are. I loved how he shot the scenes differently. I think they filmed this in Utah on the salt flats, and like the whole color correction is super washed out. That's the thing I noticed in this episode. Like, these movies have a really distinct color palette to them, and it didn't become apparent to me until we got to the Davy Jones locker sequence, in which that palette is completely upended.
Yeah.
Like, even the blacks on the black sails of the Pearl just don't look as like deep, dark, brooding black. It's just washed out and terrible.
Yeah, right. But I mean, like the whole tone of that scene, you're right. The color feels different. The tone feels different. Like just the scenes where it's just like Jack lying there and the shadow of the boat slowly moving over him. It's like, well, that's why this movie is so long, is because each of these, like, I don't know what to call it, vignettes or acts or whatever, each of them Verbinski almost seems to be viewing as its own film or its own episode, you could say. And he's giving loving attention to every piece of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing where, like, I think your complaint that the movie could be shorter is an accurate one. But also, I think one of the reasons I love the movie is because it takes the time for each of these sequences. Like, you're right that Davy Jones locker sequence is 10, 15 minutes long. And a lot of it is just Johnny Depp talking to various copies of Johnny Depp, as he's like half insane, trapped in the locker, like completely losing his mind. And it's just, it's just a fascinating little journey into the interiority of the character, which ends up being important to the movie because it helps define what his goals are and what he is doing, and the final choice he makes at the end of the movie, which is to make the non-selfish choice. You know, he's got the heart in his hand, he's got the knife in his hand, he could get everything he ever quote unquote wanted, and he chooses not to do that. He chooses to help Will instead.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think actually maybe in the development process they realized, hey, it's really hard to know what's going on in this guy's head, but it's important that we do so.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. We'll just have a conceit where he can literally talk to himself.
Yeah.
At multiple points in the movie, he has conversations with his hallucinations, and then you know exactly what his true inner struggle is with no ambiguity.
Yeah. Yeah, it simplifies it in a way, and then you get to have the joke of the one of him imagining what he'd look like as a member of the crew.
Yeah,
which is great. I continue to love the barnacled versions of all the characters.
Yeah,
like the super barnacled version of Bootstrap in this episode is great. I mean, like that's another thing that like it's wild to me that this movie is long. But at the same time, like I love that it gives room for these scenes to breathe. Like the scene between Elizabeth and Bootstrap on the ship where they talk and like they have this whole conversation, and he's like, he won't choose me, he'll choose you. Like, and he was right. Bootstrap was right, technically. And then the heartbreaking moment where you see like he's just becoming part of the ship and he's forgetting things. And like I love that scene gets to be in this movie. It's just wild to me. Like you would think if you're trying to cut this movie down, that'd be one of the things that you could maybe not lose entirely, but trim. And I love that it doesn't. I love that we get the space for these emotions. And this is going to lead into my main point here, which is that Elizabeth Swann is the protagonist of this movie, and dare I say the entire series. I think that's just the truth.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a very strong case to be made for that. I was just going to piggyback on your comment about Bootstrap and also what you said earlier about Verbinski wanting to make this as much a character story as it is a plot story, because man, like the Bootstrap stuff is so well done, and it's really done very, sparingly, right? There's a few data points. I mean, obviously we just watched the previous movie, so we have that fresh in our mind.
Sure.
But within this movie, there's a few data points where it's like you see that he's desperate, he's in terrible shape. He really hopes that his son will come for him, but then there's almost none of him left. The part of him that is left is desperate to be saved, but also doesn't want his son to come. Actually, he wants him to spare himself, and then he loses himself completely and just becomes kind of a mindless slave of Davy Jones, and he actually kills Norrington, which is a really sad moment, actually. I actually really cared about that. I mean, even the first time I saw this movie, that affected me.
It's such a brilliant choice because you have two characters that you really like, and it's pitting them against each other, and you're like, no, why are you doing this, Bootstrap? Like it really perfectly illustrates how far he's gone, and it is a tragic but somehow redemptive moment for Norrington as well. I loved that choice. It could have been any other member of the ship, could have been any other fish people, but the choice to make it Bootstrap was so good.
And then we move on from there to the end where he actually gets saved by a long complicated chain of events, but he gets saved, and then he chooses to stay on with Will, and it's like, man, that's so earned, that's so great. And
it is,
and really, in terms of this movie, they didn't spend that much time setting it up, but the setup I think spread across both movies, honestly. But I love that. I think that was so good, and there's a bunch of stuff like that, right? There's a bunch of stuff like that with various side characters.
I mean, and this is like, it's interesting because I think Will Turner's plot in these movies is more closely related to his father than it is to Elizabeth, which is why I think she's more the protagonist, because I think the love relationship between Elizabeth and Will is more in her corner, especially in this movie, than it is in his. Like, he seems to know exactly what he wants from the beginning. Like, he wants her, obviously.
Right.
And it's her kind of wrestling with her emotions and her feelings and figuring out who she is and who she wants to be and how that is going to work with him. That's her struggle throughout the movie.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think you're exactly right that Will doesn't really I'm going to say this. I don't know if I fully believe it. I think Will doesn't really change much after the first movie. The first movie, he has an arc, but subsequent to the first movie, he just continues to want the same things.
Yes.
Which is, Elizabeth. Basically, that's it, actually. And, he becomes a little bit more of a scallywag in terms of how he pursues his goals. That's definitely true. Like, that's the way in which he changes is he just becomes a very credible pirate.
They really tried to play with him, like really just screwing everyone over in this movie. Like where like the first scene when he pulls, I forget the name of the Singapore pirate lord. I totally forgot his name. Anyway, he pulls him aside and like says that he's actually working with Beckett, and you're like, wait, what? And they tried to do this thing. It never felt like. Obviously his whole thing is I need to get the pearl back because I need to get my father back, and that's my main goal throughout this whole thing. And so he's going to do whatever he needs to kind of screw everyone else over to do that. And like I liked that turn for him, but yeah, it doesn't represent change or growth or overcoming struggles. I mean, that's why I think Elizabeth is the protagonist, because like that's her journey throughout this movie, and all three of these movies is like finding out who she is, turning into this person, struggling with conflicting feelings. I love the beginning of this whole movie is her racked with guilt for what she did, and she's not sharing with Will why she's feeling this way, and it's just confusing the shit out of him. Like I loved the moment where like, are you going to keep giving me the silent treatment? When are you going to talk to me? And she said, we'll save Jack and everything will be fine. And to Will, that's because she wants to be with Jack, but no, it's because she won't feel like a person again until she undoes the terrible choice that she did.
Yeah, right. She feels terribly. Yeah. I think that was another thing I think that rubbed me the wrong way previously, was this idea that like, oh, we have drama because the characters aren't talking to each other, which is especially unrealistic when they've probably been sailing the seas for like 2 or 3 years, trying to get to and from Singapore and so forth.
Yeah, but if we pretend Singapore is just another location in the Caribbean, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's the sort of thing where you buy it as organic drama arising from.
Yeah, and you kind of understand why Elizabeth wouldn't be able to tell Will that she did that. Like it's this moment of great shame in her that.
Yeah.
The one critique I would have is when that moment is revealed, when it's revealed that she killed him, I feel like the movie needed to hit that beat just a little bit harder. It kind of hits the beat and then moves on really quick. Like Will gives her a look and it's almost played as a comedy beat. I'm like, no, this is like her entire motivating like arc in the beginning of the movie is this guilt that she's feeling. It just kind of moves on from it.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I just think it's fascinating because like what we're talking about here is the idea that the movie is doing 100 different things. and I think you're exactly like, it's like, yeah, like maybe that shot needed to last half a second longer, but like at the microscopic level of precision at which it's already working.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I can buy little criticisms like that here and there in this massive Rube Goldberg machine of a movie that they've made.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even begun to talk about how the Turner and Swan love complications reflect off of the Davy Jones and Calypso love stuff, which I think is also done beautifully. Mm-hmm. Again, this is a movie in which we get to see Davy Jones and Calypso have a whole conversation. It's like a 5-minute scene where they get to talk about their lost love, and she kind of says, they're going to free me and I'll get to be with you. And like, yeah. It's an interesting way to reflect off of their, there's a part of you that like looks at Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann at the end of this movie and says, are they really going to make it? Like that's a life that I don't know if anyone's going to be able to have. I get to spend one day with you every 10 years. I don't know if like 10 years from now, Elizabeth Swann's going to be showing up,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think we're meant to believe that she is, isn't there like a scene at the end or a post-credit scene that shows like,
yes. Yeah. They do see each other after 10 years. And there's also a fifth movie that loops back into this. There's a kid involved, their son. But the point is like, you look at the Davy Jones and the Calypso love as an example of the ways in which this can go awry, right? That like, you know, like Davy Jones was kind of hired, I guess, by Calypso to take on this role. They were in love with each other. They would get to spend forever with each other under these certain stipulations. And of course, like, I love the, like, Davy Jones is like, you weren't there for me.
Yeah.
When I came to find you. No, she's just like, would you love me? You would love me less if I was anything other than myself, which means like she was just fucking off doing something else.
Yeah. She was just being the sea. She was smashing some ships somewhere or
right.
or being the waves or something. Yeah. And yeah, it's like, look, like their natures are opposed basically. I mean, I think that's framing it that way is important, because not only is she not there, but his reaction is worse, if anything, because he's not just spurned. He actively tells the Brethren Court how to bind her. So this is another thing I just didn't understand the first time I saw the movie, by the way, is that just the plot sequencing there, the timeline is what I didn't understand. The timeline is that he was Davy Jones. He came ashore for the first time. She wasn't there. He was heartbroken. It basically, in rage or heartbreak, he told the Brethren Court how to bind her as revenge.
Yes.
And she doesn't know that. Crucially, she doesn't know that.
Yes.
So that whole conversation is depending on the fact that she doesn't actually know that it was him. And then, but of course, Will Turner does know, because Davy Jones admitted it in front of him. And so Will Turner says that to her just as she's transforming. So all that's a pretty intricate little web right there.
Yeah.
I just totally missed all that the first time through. But this time, like I didn't understand why he told her that at the last second. I was like, doesn't she already know that?
No,
she doesn't already know that.
She didn't. Yeah. I mean, because we saw that her plan was, once released, she was going to, Barbossa's whole gambit in this whole thing is that she'll be so grateful that she'll be released that she won't destroy all of us who did the binding. And he was wrong. He was textually wrong in that. And it is only Will Turner's move at the last second that kind of saves them. And interestingly enough, it's not like she helps them. She kind of like just sits in the middle and lets them duke it out. By creating the most epic climax of any trilogy I've seen just about, because God, that climax is amazing. It's so good. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, it's pretty great, right? That's the thing. This is one of those things that I'm conflicted about. And here's the thing: is it gets down to that classic, almost nauseatingly repetitive, like CGI versus practical effects thing, which we kind of don't even like talking about. But like, all of the ship battles in the first movie were mostly practical.
Sure.
With maybe some compositing. This has got to be like 95% CGI, right? Like when you've got Jack and Squid Man up in the I don't know any of these words.
They're on the mast thingy,
the transom.
Sure.
Whatever. Sword fighting. It's like the only real thing in that scene is Johnny Depp. And it's like, part of me does feel that as a kind of loss, as a kind of like, I know that's not like I can't get sucked into it quite the same way I could get sucked into it when my brain isn't reporting 1,000 little minor imperfections. But it's I guess I don't really care that much. I just care a little bit. So, I mean, I don't know.
I am kind of blinded by the audacity and the vision of it all, even if yes, it's obvious that it's CG in several moments. Like, just there is the climax of this movie is two ships encircling each other in a giant maelstrom, while Davy Jones and Jack Sparrow are fighting on the top transom, sure, whatever. While Elizabeth and Will are coming to their climax of their relationship, that is them getting married by Barbossa. While all these characters are fighting, there's this big giant clash between all the characters of the past three movies, and it's just happening in the biggest possible way. It's just awe-inspiring to me that that Verbinski says, yeah, this is what I'm gonna fucking do. I'm gonna do this, and it's gonna be awesome. And he was right. It is fucking awesome.
It is. I mean, the whole like saying like, oh, we got to pull out of this whirlpool, and then I forget whether it's Barbossa or who. They're like, no, we've got to turn into it to try to cut him off.
Yeah,
because
we'll
the
gotta
water's
chase
faster.
him through the faster waters. Yeah, it's like Jeffrey Rush. Holy shit! Like he was MVP in the first movie, and I'm so like the decision to bring him back, even though they just kind of yada yada'd how they did it, like it was so great because he's so fucking good in this movie. Just like him sitting there by the wheel, like just shouting out orders and turning the ship is like some of the most amazing moments of this movie, where you're just like, he embodies the idea of pirate, like the idea of the Pirates of the Caribbean. If you want to talk about the Disney ride, or just like the stereotypical image of what a pirate is, it's Jeffrey Rush. It just is. It's his Barbossa. It's wonderful.
Yeah, right. I think he's the glue that holds together a lot of the like excessively complicated scheming and backstabbing too.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think simply due to his performance, we always know where he stands on things. Yeah,
I mean, he actually doesn't do that much backstabbing of his own. I think he's pretty forthright about what he wants in this movie.
That's true. He's the most straightforward. Yeah,
he wants to bring back Calypso. That's what he wants to do. I one small fact: we learned that his first name is Hector in this movie, and I read that like that they didn't have a first name for him, but on the DVD commentary for the first movie, Johnny Depp jokingly said his name is Hector, and like the fans took that as fact. And so the writers were just like, okay, I guess we're going to call him Hector now.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you just reminded me of the whole sequence where they confront Jack in the locker and he's treating them like they're hallucinations, and just what a great scene that is all told.
Yeah. It's so good. I mean, Jack Sparrow uses like 6 Latin phrases in this movie, like legal phrases. Right. So he's basically a lawyer is what I'm going for now.
Yeah, right. He probably was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably forgetting like whole scenes, aren't we? Like whole
of course
story movements of this movie.
This is just a huge movie. I mean, like Elizabeth becomes a captain of her own ship.
Yeah.
She becomes a pirate lord and the pirate king within like 5 minutes of each other.
I think just to talk about like directing and the choices that are made, like this is by far the most visually lush, and it kind of reminds me like, this is the director who's going to go on to make Rango, where one of the only times I can really think of that a director has gone from live action to CGI, just because you get the sense that he's like chafing because he's like, I want to be able to make it more visually complex and beautiful, and I can't do that. I need to go into the computer world where I can control everything. That's almost what this is, because you've got like the Asian pirates, the Caribbean pirates. You've got basically there's 9 pieces of 8, so you've got like 9 different pirate styles.
Yeah, you've got the French guy. I think they're based off of real pirates too.
But not just the captains, but all of their subordinates, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the fish people, and then there's of course, the East India Company, who are dressed like British soldiers.
Cannot, like, I'm sorry, I love this movie to death, but every time I see like the fish people and the fully decked out British soldiers like swing across ropes to board a ship at the same time, I'm just like, this looks absurd. Like they're just working together. Like what are the British regulars like thinking when they're next to like the eel head guy? It's just so wild.
Right. I mean, I think that there are some moments in the movie where you can sort of see that the British soldiers are super uncomfortable with all of this, but they're also very, like, that's the kind of the point, is that they're too regimented and rule abiding. But no, so like the, just the visual splendor of every shot, you're seeing this massive collage of visual complexity.
Yeah.
And then, I noticed that it's not like I haven't noticed it before, but I noticed it even more this time, that you have like all of the ship designs are also distinctive. Like at this point, we know what the Black Pearl looks like from a distance. We know what, Davy Jones, the Dutchman looks like. Yeah. We know, which is another really beautiful design. Like, yeah, it's just so visually, and obviously this is something that Verbinski really emphasizes.
Mm-hmm.
So I just yeah, I just love it.
Yeah, no, I love it too. And I like the one thing I noticed, there's that where they all meet on the sandbar, you know, that scene.
Yeah.
That's straight a Western. Like he's just
Yeah.
shooting a Western there. And it's like, I know Rango's coming up, and I just like, I could feel it. I could feel the moment. That also features my favorite detail in the movie, which is like, you can imagine the writers in the writer's room going, okay, now we're going to have this sweet parlay, and it's going to be on the sandbar, and it's going to look amazing, and we're going to have all our characters there. Elizabeth is going to be there. Will's going to be there. Barbossa, Jack Sparrow, Beckett, and Davy Jones. And then someone in the room goes, sir, how is Davy Jones going to be on the sandbar when we've established that he can only go on land once every 10 years? Someone had the brilliant idea to just put him in a bucket.
Uh-huh.
And it's the most amazing. And like the reason Gore Verbinski is a genius is because someone came up with the idea, oh, we'll just put him in a bucket. And Verbinski said, okay, I got this idea for a shot. And the shot is this low angle sweeping across their legs scene that goes from Beckett's legs to Turner's legs to the bucket.
Yep.
And it's like, it's an amazing shot because it is a Western shot, right? This is a Western shot. You go down to the legs and you can see in the distance the others approaching across the plane of combat, and then it's a man in a bucket.
Yeah, no, it's great. And isn't there like a very, very classically Western like sound cue over that shot as well?
Yes.
I don't know if I can identify it. It's like, it's almost like a harmonica or something, but yeah, I don't know.
It's marvelous.
Yeah. No, I think the Western idea. I don't just think this. I know actually from reading about it that the Western, the idea of this movie being sort of a Western, like the railroad comes to town and brings in like civilization to the world of the, you know, what used to be lawless.
Sure.
And there's the conflict between modernity and tradition, like that was something they had in mind for the themes of the story. So yeah, that's great.
I loved it. It's so good, and every one of these characters works, and they all have their arcs, and even poor Governor Swan gets his own send off, which is a heartbreaking scene.
God, yeah, no, I mean, that dude is great. Obviously, like he's in the movie for 90 seconds and breaks your heart. I mean, I love that, just the last, like, give my regards to your mother, shall I, as he turns away. You're just like, oh my God. Yeah. It's genius. I love it.
And then even the two stupid British guys from the very first movie get their arc in which they dress up as pirates and just join the crew.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
hilarious.
it. Everything wraps up perfectly. It's great. The captain I was thinking of was Sao Feng, who of course is played by Chow Yun-fat, who was incredible. He was so good. Apparently he was so excited to be in this movie that he was like doing anything he could to help out in any way he could to help out with his character, because he was so excited to be in the movie. That's funny.
He definitely you never see this sign of this side of Chow Yun-fat and other things. No. He does. I don't know. I haven't in the other things I've seen with Chow Yun-fat, I should say, he's usually serious and stoic.
Yeah.
And so, theatrical Chow Yun-fat is quite a treat.
Can we talk about how good this movie was at making each and every one of these people look absolutely disgusting?
Yeah, no, the like the whites of everyone's eyes are like yellow and veiny, as if they're all jaundiced. Except for our beautiful Hollywood leads.
Yes, Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley are perfect.
Yeah.
But, it's such an interesting choice because like all the Barbossa looks disgusting, and but that only adds to his character. Like it's such an amazing thing because his character design was originally meant to be the bad guy,
right.
So they went full bore with it, and then in the third movie they made him a good guy.
Yeah.
And they didn't change his design. Like, I wonder if they got notes about that from the studios. Like, you really got to soften this guy up a little bit. Like, maybe make it so his teeth don't look quite so disgusting. And I I just imagine my boy Gore Verbinski saying no.
Yeah. No, I got to do it this way.
Yeah, we have to do it this way.
Yeah. Did this movie get a different rating than the others, or?
I don't think so. No, they're all PG-13.
Yeah,
so.
it just seemed there's definitely a few beats where, I feel like the other movies would have like cut away from the violent stab or gunshot wound to the head, and this movie just shows it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because so much of the other movie, like in the first movie, they're fighting ghost pirates.
Mm-hmm.
In the second movie, they're fighting fish people. In this movie, they're fighting a lot of fish people too, but they're fish people intermixed with the East Indian Company people. And so there's just a lot of stabbing of humans that happens in this movie.
I mean, well, one bit that made me kind of like, was when they're in the bathhouse and like one of the women who's with Chow Yun Fat just gets like shot in the head graphically, and you're just like, like I guess it works at making me really hate these guys. So that was it was effective. It was just kind of like, I don't know. I reacted to it for sure.
No, yeah, I mean, there were definitely like moments throughout my entire runtime with the movie that I took, like I was taken aback at the level of violence. And I don't know if this is just me being a new parent and like imagining my future kids like watching this movie, but there was like, oh, whoa. Like you just kind of think of this as a kid's movie. And it's not that it's not. It's just, I think this is a really fascinating examination of the shifting nature of what PG-13 is.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I think there's definitely a cinematic language way of making you feel versus not feel an act of violence, right? And like whether you show it and how you show it and how you show people reacting to it. Like when that woman gets shot in the head, like the other woman who maybe is her sister, like sees it and reacts to it and like looks horrified and then looks enraged, and it's like, well, that's all part of selling it and making it land in an emotional, visceral way. Whereas, I think, they didn't have to do that. That was obviously a choice. That's several choices, actually. Yeah,
I think you're right. I mean, I don't think this movie ever turns away from the brutality of the violence. I mean, I think it establishes that in that opening sequence. Like, we don't literally see the child hung, but like that is the emotional beat that moves us into the title sequence, right?
Yeah.
As the kid is the one that starts the song, like the barrel is put up there for him to stand on, and then he's hung, and the dropping of the coin from his dead hand is what brings up the title sequence. And I think it's actually a beautiful shot of like the slow-mo of the coin hitting the ground with this completely black background, and Pirates of the Caribbean pops up. It's such an interesting emotional beat because it's on a down note, right? Like this is an adventure series, and like the first movies, the title sequences were brought up in either a moment of like creepy, like otherworldliness or a call to adventure moment. In this movie, it's a beat of death and fascism and like it's such an interesting note. I liked it, but it's fascinating the way Verbinski kind of manages the tone of this whole thing.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think that might be yet another thing that made me react to it negatively the first time is that you get basically two fairly straightforward swashbuckling adventures, obviously immaculately executed. And then the next one just slaps you right in the face with Holocaust imagery, and you're like, what is this movie? Which just gives you, it's just kind of a downer. And there's a lot of downer beats. Like, I mean, I dramatically love the idea of Bootstrap Bill being the one to kill Norrington, but also you're kind of pissed.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of downer kind of. It's not like it's intentionally messing with the audience. It's just like, well, it's a more painful choice than I think they would have made in the other movies.
Yeah, I don't want to get too broad and unfair, but it feels like one of the reasons why this movie works the most for me is it often doesn't feel like we're getting necessarily exactly what we want. Like I think a lot of especially modern blockbusters are just very conscious throughout the entire production process of like giving the people exactly what they expect to see when they go sit down and see a 4-quadrant tentpole movie.
Yeah.
This is a movie that is almost by design not doing that. I mean, like even the ending, of Will and Elizabeth's love story is kind of on a downer. I mean, it's hopeful, right? But it's like neither of them really truly gets what they want.
Right.
They don't get to be together.
Yeah, I mean, even Jack doesn't get what he wants, actually.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great point.
But I respect the movie because it's what was right for the characters.
Yeah, because I think overall the fact that the movie makes those choices means that by the end you could believe that Will could die, which is actually pretty remarkable for like Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean. Like I don't remember exactly what I thought the first time I saw this movie, but I think when he gets stabbed, I was like, okay, well maybe I was like, okay, he's probably going to end up stabbing it, but like that's still a downer outcome.
Yeah,
like people don't. Yeah, it's a good, but it it does the thing where it's like, well, that's dramatically perfect though. Everyone's wants and needs are sort of reshuffled like musical chairs.
Yeah,
and it's extremely satisfying, even if it's bittersweet.
And the movie did a very good job of hitting the beat multiple times of like the person who kills this guy is going to have to take his position. Like we got maybe too many times. I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, we've got it that the person, like, I think it's Calypso that says it. It's a Bootstrap that says it. And Jack says it to himself. Like it's great. I mean, it works because when you see the moment of Will getting stabbed, like it's almost as if the solution is right there. And like, I think that allows the audience to be half a step ahead of the characters, and it allows us to contextualize what Sparrow's choice is, because we see and understand right in that moment that his choice is, I can take this for myself or I can give it to someone else. And that is the most important choice that Jack Sparrow will ever make. And he makes the right one.
Yeah, right. I mean, he had everything. He had everything he wanted in the palm of his hand, literally.
Yeah.
And finally, we learn for a certainty that he actually has a good heart and cares. He already has a good heart, you could say.
Yeah, he doesn't need to take his out and give it to someone else.
Yeah. And plus, he has a map to the Fountain of Youth.
Yes, which is in a movie that we will never talk about.
Yeah, I'm never going to watch it. I'm just
good call.
That's the beautiful thing about this ending is I can just imagine that Jack goes off and has a whole bunch of other adventures. Maybe finds the Fountain of Youth. Sure, probably gets cheated out of that too. Doesn't, but it's I don't want to see it.
Yeah. I liked that when Will gets stabbed and gets his heart removed. I like when we see him again. He has a pierced ear.
Yeah,
again. I guess
he's a real pirate now.
Turning into the captain of the Flying Dutchman results in an ear piercing.
Yeah, it's the concession to going full octopus form.
So I mean, just to check my understanding, the reason why they were all octopusy and fish people-y is because they were not doing their job, right? Their job was, they're supposed to be ferrying the dead to the underworld, whatever. And they weren't doing it. And so because they weren't doing that, they were turning into fish people.
Yeah, they were cursed and corrupted, and he was using his position for his own sick sort of revenge against the world. And I don't really know exactly what they were supposed to be doing, and it's fine. I don't, you don't need to. You don't need to know exactly.
And I gotta say, when we first were told about the Davy Jones cutting his heart out and locking it away in a box because he was so brokenhearted, I didn't think that was just like part of the gig of being the captain of the Flying Dutchman. Like, I thought that was just a thing specific to Davy Jones because of his specific heartbroken nature. But hey, whatever, it works.
Yeah, no, it's part of the cursed magic. It seeks out someone who is brokenhearted. See, that's the thing. It never would have worked with Jack.
There you go. Yeah. Have you ever seen a green flash? They discuss green flashes in this movie.
I don't think I have, but then I looked it up on YouTube to understand what it actually was, and I have a better understanding now. But
yeah, I've seen one. We were in Hawaii for my honeymoon, or no, it was my wife's 30th birthday, and we were on a ship, like on a cruise around one of the islands at night, or at sunset, and like the driver of the boat like put us in the perfect position as like you don't always get to see it, but maybe we'll get lucky tonight. And it's a pretty cool effect.
That's neat. Yeah, I mean, basically, it's just the distortion, sort of mirage-like distortion, bends different colors of light differently, and it ends up being that sometimes the very tip of the sun as it goes over the horizon will be green.
Yep.
And it doesn't look like what it looks like in the movie, though.
It doesn't look at all what it looks like in the movie. It's just like literally like a second of green that you see as the sun dips below the horizon.
So I guess, what did y'all do when the ship flipped over, though?
I guess I've been in the world of the dead the whole time.
Yeah.
And so you're dead. Sorry.
I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page there. Speaking of the, well, actually, no, that was when they fell off the waterfall. But
yes,
this is the thing that made me smile the most, is because before I had seen this movie, I had never gone to Disneyland. I had never gone on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride.
Mm-hmm.
But since then, I have gone to Disneyland and I have gone on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. And so when they go over the waterfall into blackness, and then you hear, like, I forget what it is, something, and then a piratey voice says, "Dead men tell no tales." That's like exactly from the ride.
Yeah, it's literally audio from the ride in that moment.
And the idea of going down a dark waterfall in pitch darkness is like that's the ride.
Yeah.
So I was like, you did the thing.
Isn't it delightful that they like this is it's making a movie based on a Disney ride is absurd.
Uh-huh.
It was absurd when they came up with the idea at first. It's absurd this year, in which there's going to be a Jungle Cruise movie starring The Rock. That is happening. It's an absurd idea. But the thing I love about it is their commitment to the idea. The idea was not just, we're going to take this ride and we're just going to say it's Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean and you'll recognize that. Like they were committed to the concept of, we should make this feel like the ride, and like the designs of the pirates, the things that the pirates say, the references, like they were committed throughout to not just have this be, it's based on the ride and name only. And I don't know, I respect that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, absolutely. I think it's funny because they other than I think like the dog with the keys, I don't think there were that many like direct references in the first movie, but like this is the most direct reference ever, and I think they totally earned it at that point.
Oh yeah. Well, especially it's happening in a moment of like you're literally like transferring between worlds, and so like part of it is like, are we going to the world of the ride? Like I don't know, like shit's getting real metaphysical in this moment, and it's a perfect moment to just throw that in there.
Sure, I love it.
It's great. It's so good. This is such a good movie. I'm so glad you enjoyed this trilogy. I've been singing the praises of this thing forever, and I think people like it's. I won't go so far as to say most people are watching it wrong. I don't want to say that, but I think these are just really fun. And I think one of the things that I've really come to appreciate with is, some MCU movies aside, I think the blockbuster movies of right now are just not as high quality as a movie like this.
Yeah, no, I mean, anything by Verbinski is going to be well above average in every way, for sure.
That's true.
And I mean, I think it definitely helped watching all three movies more or less back to back like that.
Sure.
That really raised my appreciation for like the elegant, connected thing they had built, because it really does flow through 1 to 2 to 3. Like it's one of the better trilogies in the sense of like connecting and having a cohesive narrative arc across the whole thing.
Totally agree. Yeah.
So.
I love it. I hope you folks enjoyed revisiting it too. I hope you watched it with us. And if you want to find out more about the fourth movie that Matt and I will never be talking about, this is a perfect time to head over to our Patreon account, patreon.com/doofmedia, sign up at the Doof Troop level or above, and you can hear Ruben and Elliot and Georgia talk about Pirates of the Caribbean 4. I even forget what the subtitle of it is because it's so bad, but they talk all about it. And I listened to I haven't been listening to their conversations about the other three because I was afraid that it would influence like what we're talking about. But that one I knew we weren't going to talk about, so I listened to it, and yeah, that's a bad movie.
I listened to like half of it because I didn't watch that movie and I never watched it, and I never will watch it. It just kind of sounded like there wasn't much to it. Just it's like, yeah, it doesn't have any of the charm or
Nope.
the love put into it or
Nope.
the investment from all the creators. It's just kind of perfunctory. Seems like it anyway. I haven't seen it. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, I don't know, they're going to talk about 5 too, which is an interesting one that we will also never talk about, but is definitely trying to turn things back towards what the Verbinski trilogy was. I don't think it quite succeeds, but there's some interesting ideas in there, at least.
Well, that's good to know as a piece of abstract trivia.
All right, well, that is it for the Pirates trilogy. Wow, we're done. We're done with those. We still have 3 Verbinski movies to go, but we're done with those.
Well, I'm glad there's more.
Yeah. The next Verbinski movie we will be talking about is, as we talked about today, Rango. It's a movie we've actually reviewed on this show before, but I think it will be fun to approach this having gone through these past 7 movies and see what we've learned about Verbinski and what that translates into Rango. Because Rango is really representative of, you made us billions of dollars with the Pirates movies. Here you go. Take unlimited money and make whatever you want. And what Gore Verbinski chose to make is Rango. And so it might be the movie that says the most about him.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I that'll be fun because we already talked about the movie in general, so we can really, really drill down into what Verbinski had to do with it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so that'll be in a couple weeks.
Doof.
All right, Matt, we got to talk about some results of the council.
Okay.
As you probably remember, last week we talked about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and we agreed that is a movie that is worthy of being entered into the Doof canon. I think we kind of collectively agreed it's the best, or at least one of the best of the Star Trek films.
Yeah, I think there's some contenders for that role, but it definitely sits at the top, yeah.
And our listeners agreed with us. With 74% of the vote, our listeners said yes, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan should be entered into the Doof canon of the best films of all time. We had a comment from Jonathan who said 1,000% yes. Who said it's not only one of the best Star Trek movies, it's also one of the best movies ever. Everything from the acting to the pacing, the plot, emotional beats, even the tactile nature of the ship's controls, and showing the crew actually working to keep it running. This movie holds a special place in my heart. And I cannot think of a worthier contender for the canon.
But apparently 25% of our patrons disagree.
Yeah.
So let's hear from them.
Yeah, so we heard from Elizabeth, who said that they think this movie is overrated. It's not a good Trek movie, and it's at best a decent action movie. That they agree that Spock's death scene is a powerful one, but it's not enough to make up for the rest of the movie, which they didn't like. That's an interesting opinion, and obviously I disagree with Elizabeth. And that's fine. But I think after watching the original series very recently, I do think it's more closer to what the original series was than like the motion picture, the first one.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched it, so I can't confirm or deny. I think my thought is something along the lines of, I don't think it is an action movie. I think that maybe if you watch it as an action movie, then you're going to find it boring. Because I mean, if anything, I would say the flaw of the movie lies in the other direction, that it's a really slow movie. There's a lot of talking scenes, which I happen to like, because I like the characters and I like what they're doing. But maybe it could have even been trimmed a bit. Like, I'm not saying the movie's above criticism, actually. But I think it, it's the sort of like I called it a submarine movie in our discussion. It's a whole lot of waiting and a whole lot of tension.
Yeah.
And then rapid moments of action.
But I think, I mean, in my opinion, that's what the original series was. Like, it's a lot of talking, but at some point in the episode, Kirk is going to punch someone in the face. Like, that's just what he does. And in this movie, instead of like physically punching someone in the face, he used a torpedo to do it. And that's the only difference, is that it's a lot of talking that will have one action set piece at some point. Normally in the show, it was Kirk, putting his two hands together to make like a double fist and then slamming that double fist down on someone's head or chest or something.
The classic Star Trek fighting style, which which is persistent across all of the Star Treks. So hilarious.
It's so goofy. I love it though.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about this movie as we kind of inducted into the canon here, Matt. I think stepping back and looking at this movie as like a meta view of Star Trek at the time is really interesting to me, because we talked about like this movie as a metaphor for new life, right? And this is actually the movie that saved Star Trek.
Uh-huh.
Like we kind of forget this in the world we live in, but Star Trek came out in the mid 60s. It wasn't that popular. Every season there was a struggle for it to stay on air to the next season. Like Gene Roddenberry basically weaponized the fans that he had to send countless letters. It was basically like the first fan like event to beg to keep a show on the air was Star Trek.
Uh-huh.
And they had to do it every single year of the 3 years it was on. And each year they got less budget to work with. And it was like a notoriously difficult show to work on because they were always running over budget and they were late. And so the studio didn't like the show at all. And it was only the outcrying of the fans that kept it going. It made it 3 years. It then disappears. And it's not until the mid to late 70s, almost a decade later, that the show really starts to pick up steam when it's in syndication, and kids that are like 12, 13, like my dad, are watching it. And well, I was a little older than that, but like my dad loves Star Trek. My dad's a huge Star Trek guy. He did not watch the original series while it was airing. He watched it when it was in syndication later.
Yeah.
And that's how most people found Star Trek. And then so the thing's resurrected partially because of the success of Star Wars, and they make a movie, Star Trek the Motion Picture, and it absolutely bombs. It did horribly. Nobody liked it. It made no money. And there's a world in which Star Trek is just no longer a thing after this, right?
Yeah.
This movie comes out, it tanks, and they're like, okay, we're done. And then, the Genesis Project activates and brings us Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which saves Star Trek.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And then flourishes, and we get Next Generation, we get a whole bunch of other movies.
Yeah.
But then because there was a mistake in the calculations, it begins to become necrotic and overgrows and gives rise to other later series that aren't good.
One time we're going to have to talk about Picard. I'm not emotionally ready to talk about the show Picard because I watched like 3 episodes and then I stopped watching it. And
I haven't. I just haven't heard anything good about it, so I haven't watched it.
Yeah, I think we owe it to ourselves to watch it and talk about it at some point, considering how important The Next Generation is to both of us. But man, talk about disappointment. I don't.
I mean, I think we probably will. I would challenge that and just say, like, just because they have a character named Jean-Luc Picard played by Patrick Stewart doesn't mean that that's Jean-Luc Picard.
Sure,
that's not that. Like,
but you watched every single Next Generation movie that came out.
That's true, and
that really wasn't Jean-Luc
But
Picard
that became
either.
an increasingly bad decision over time.
Fair, yeah.
And maybe I've learned my lesson. Is my response.
But it's content. You have to consume it. That's how the world works.
Well, when you put it that way, must consume product. Yes. Okay.
One day. I am in no rush to have that conversation, but it feels like it's something that we have to reckon with. Yeah. I mean, maybe one day when Patrick Stewart passes away, hopefully years and years and years and years from now, that'll be a thing we can finally turn to.
Yeah, sure.
And shit on.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
All right. So congratulations to Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, for being entered into the Doof canon. You can see a list of all those movies. Freshman.com.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. Next month, Scott.
Next month. It's going to be my month.
Okay.
July. It's going to be it. I can't wait.
Awesome.
Doof. All right, Matt, let's wrap this thing up by talking about action. Right?
Yeah.
So we did a couple weeks ago, we did our top 5 TV shows to learn about us. And we thought we had so much fun with doing that. We wanted to do something else similar to it. And I was thinking about action a lot after watching this movie. And then I saw a Twitter thing that was talking about top 4 action scenes. And I said, ooh, let's steal that, except make it 5 because that's what we do. Because fuck 4s.
Yeah.
And I thought we'd do this. And I think the interesting thing about this, Matt, is it's going to be, I think we just kind of discussed this beforehand and we didn't put a lot of rules on it. Like, what does action scene mean? I think the one rule we said was one day we're going to do like a car chase thing separately. So we're not going to do anything car chasey in this. So those, yes, they're action sequences, but we're not going to do, so you won't see any Mad Max in here. The Matrix 2 highway scene, not going to be in this because we consider that a car chase scene. So this is mostly just people fighting people.
Yeah. And I think I added a sort of self-imposed rule, which was something like it has to be an action scene that I thought was just fucking amazing the first time I saw it, and like borderline life-changing the first time I saw it.
Okay.
Not just like, oh, an awesome, like there's 1,000 awesome action scenes, right? But they had to be ones that struck me particularly strongly the first time I saw them.
Okay. So this was really hard. This was really difficult for me to do. I came up with it and then I was like, oh, this will be easy. And then I spent like 2 hours on this, like a really absurd amount of time, like going to YouTube and watching these sequences again and saying, okay, that was awesome, but was it awesome enough? I think I've got it down to 5, but we'll see. I'm going to play really loose with this and I'm going to change my mind probably halfway through, but let's do it, Matt.
All right, let's do it.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I'll start from least likely to have overlapped with you.
Okay.
So the first ones are probably going to be weird, and then we're going to get more expected as we go. Okay,
that's fair.
The first one is the first fight in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Okay. Which is the first fight?
The first fight is, well, so basically it's a slow, boring movie with a lot of talking and walking around between rooms until the masked ninja in the night slips down from the rooftop and steals the sword, and then it turns into a wuxia movie, which I had never seen before because I was an American kid. And not only was it this genre, this whole universe I had never had any real insight into, but it's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which it has incredibly high production values and it's just a immaculately well made movie.
Yeah.
So it was like receiving a piece of wonderful art from like another world, you know.
Sure.
And I went to see this movie with my friend David, and we both, like as the fight went on and they were like flying around and doing like these incredibly intricate kung fu exchanges, the likes of which you just never see in Western movies, especially back then. We just started laughing. We were just like laughing with like giddy glee at what we were seeing, and it was just like we just walked out of the movie, and then I think we like had to go buy like swords to hit each other with or something. I mean, it was just a fantastic film experience, and I'll always remember it fondly.
That's awesome. I had a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon fight on my list, on my short list.
Oh, that's fine. Okay.
I think I'm going to commit to it because you've inspired me here.
Okay.
But I did not pick that fight. I picked the fight much later in the movie where Michelle Yeoh and Zhang Zi fight each other for the first time.
Sure.
Not for the first time, but like their big fight.
In
like
the dojo, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Where Michelle Yeoh like uses every single weapon against the sword and is totally like, I agree with you. This is a beautiful movie. It's just that fight to me, like I love the wuxia stuff. I love the jumping on the trees, but that fight to me is so emotional and there's so much going on in the fight. Like one of the things I realized when I was sitting down to pull these and kind of trying to come up with what are my favorites and why is like what makes a good action sequence. And it's not just cool shit, right? It has to be the emotion and the stakes behind it. And the thing I love about that fight so much is you have this girl who is technically not as good as the older woman, but she's got a better weapon. And it's like the push and pull of that. And the realization, there's a moment in that action sequence where Michelle Yeoh has like a big fucking huge sword and she slashes at her and the sword gets chopped in half by the amazing better wonderful blade.
The Green Destiny.
The Green Destiny, thank you. And Michelle Yeoh, her sword gets chopped in half, but she carries her swing through, and she has the half of the sword right up against the other girl's neck. And you realize that this whole time, she wasn't playing to hurt her at all. Like, that was never her intent to hurt her. And the other character realizes this at the same time too. And her response to that is to slash out with her sword and cut her on the arm. And it's this amazingly powerful emotional exchange moment where, like, a lot of this movie is these two women kind of wrestling with each other, one trying to help the other and save her. And I don't know, there's just something about that moment that it blows me away. I haven't rewatched the movie in forever, but I rewatched that sequence in preparation for this, and still just amazing. Like, just on a pure technical level, the martial arts on display there, incredible. It's shot wonderfully. Yeah,
I love that movie. We don't talk about that movie very often. In fact, maybe you didn't know how much I love that movie, but I do.
I knew you did. I didn't. I put this on my list. I tried to pick things that I was kind of semi-certain that you wouldn't pick, because I didn't want all our lists to just be repeats. But
right.
I had to commit to this one. So.
All right. Well, I think that's fair. I think that movie deserves a couple slots in a list like this, honestly.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. All right. What's number 2, Matt?
All right. My number 2 is, I guess, mild spoilers for Breaking Bad. Yeah, I'm going to try to do mild spoilers, but it's the scene where the twins come to kill Hank.
Okay.
And I'm going to avoid saying any more plot relevant stuff other than that, but I'll say, like, it is probably the only one on my list that's from a TV show, number 1.
Mm-hmm.
It was a moment of storytelling where, like, I think I just, like, wasn't breathing for the whole duration, because if you don't know Breaking Bad, Hank is this character who, especially at this point in the show, like, he is not someone you see as a badass. He is not someone who you would expect to be in an action scene in the first place, although I think he is in at least one prior to that. It seems like the whole situation has been set up to be like, oh no, Hank's gonna die here. This is horrible. And, like, the antagonists, the twins, have been built up as these just, like, terrifying, gangland assassins who kill people with a fire axe. Yeah. And like, it's this perfect moment where you really believe that this beloved character could just die horribly here. And then, like, it's just this perfect, and then beyond that, it's just perfectly shot, the unfolding of moment to moment, and the escalation, and the even, like, the individual shots, and, like, the Hank shaking, trying to put the bullet in the chamber. It's all just so good. So good.
It is. I think this is such a great pick. Hank is a really good character on the show. I mean, I love, thinking about the show's journey, and I'll try not to spoil things either, but, like, Hank is a character who is introduced specifically to kind of be the antithesis of Walt, right? He is this popular guy who is the hit at every party he's at. He's kind of loud and outspoken. Everyone seems to like him. He's got the cool job versus Walt's lame job. And then part of the journey of the show is Walt's, like, he feels from the beginning that he's better than Hank, and nobody else can see it. And as he gets more powerful, he becomes better than Hank. And then there is this real moment of realization that, no, Hank's actually, like, fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And we were just kind of so trapped in Walt's point of view that we saw him as, like, the inferior, bumbling idiot guy who is not actually that good at his job. But no, he is.
Yeah, like the introduction to Hank is basically like, oh, this guy's going to be, like, annoying comic relief, basically.
Yeah.
And then you're right, like, eventually the show switches in a way where you're like, oh, Hank is now a main character, and you realize that he has his own life, and he's awesome.
Well, yeah, and then a lot of the later half of the show for Hank is a direct result of things that happened to him in this fight.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
All right, so that's your number 2.
Yep. What's your number 2?
Oh boy, what do I pick here? What do I go for number 2? I think I'm gonna go to Lord of the Rings, and I'm going to go Boromir's death scene here.
Okay.
I knew I wanted a Lord of the Rings scene in this list, and I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on which one I wanted. For a while there, I was going to say it's definitely going to be Moria. I think Moria is a really great scene in that movie because it's really the first beats of real action in the movie. In a much broader way. Like, it's not to say there's not action earlier in the movie, but like this is like full scale like fighting, and it comes an hour and some minutes into this movie. And then of course the Two Towers Helm's Deep sequence is an all-timer. But if we're talking like what affected me the most, the Boromir death scene at the end of Fellowship of the Ring has to be it. I think this is just an incredibly well done sequence from beginning to end. You know, it starts with Aragorn talking to Frodo, and then expands from there. Legolas joins, and then we kind of zoom out, and Jackson does this amazing shot where like they hear the horn of Gondor, and then he takes to the air, and it's an aerial shot that goes over the whole battlefield as we see all the orcs rush towards a central point. And what is at that central point? It's Boromir with the two hobbits. He's blowing the horn and protecting them, and then the heartbreaking moment of slow motion as the guy takes fucking 3 or 4 arrows to the chest and keeps on fighting. It is a powerful, impactful, emotional scene. The action matters. It is intrinsically tied to Boromir's character and the arc he's gone through. Like, the action in this movie is necessary because it is how he is attempting to redeem himself, is through the fighting that he is doing. I don't know. It's perfect, man.
Yeah.
And it gets me every time.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. It's one of the best moments of the whole series. Not just as an action scene, but as just a dramatic moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course you get the wonderful, like the follow up to his death is Aragorn getting to beat the shit out of the orc that just killed him. And there's just such catharsis there.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love that too. Yeah. You know, I don't think this is going to be on my list, but I always think about the very first giant war scene in the prologue, prologue of the first film, just because, you know, you the first time I walked into that film, I was already like in love with Lord of the Rings. I was obsessed with Lord of the Rings, and I was like, okay, are they going to do justice to this? And the prologue and the epic battle in sepia tones between the elves and men and the enormous mass of orcs and then Sauron comes out, and it's just like, okay, yeah, they're gonna do me good, aren't they? Yeah, okay.
I think it's such an important thing that the movie did, because it has to establish for the fans, is this going to be wide enough in scope to capture what Lord of the Rings was?
Yeah.
And it imagine like setting that tone that early. Like, you're like, yes, absolutely, we're gonna do this justice. Look, see this. Yeah, it's great.
It's the good use of a prologue is to tease what sort of thing you're getting into. Yeah. All right, my next one is Neo versus Agent Smith in the subway station. Probably
I specifically did not pick this because I knew you were going to.
Yep. I don't know, man. I mean, you want to hear me talk about this way longer, you can go listen to our episode on The Matrix, but like, just everything you can say positive about an action scene, it's the culmination of a character's arc. It's not just fighting. I mean, crucially, Neo should just run away.
Yeah.
But he has something to prove here. And so the fight is about that, actually.
Yeah. It's remarkable. It's so good. And I think part of the problem that The Matrix Reloaded has is it's attempting to top a thing that's impossible to top.
Yeah, right. But I mean, everything, you know, it starts out with you know, one of the two, you know, immortal bullet time shots of the film where they're jumping toward each other, which is already in and of itself like, okay, that makes this a top action scene, just that it has this really like film historic shot in it. And then it you know, there's this perfect like back and forth where, you know, Neo's doing well, and then Smith is kicking his ass, and then Smith throws one of the train tracks, and then just God, the you know, the moment, the exchange between them on the tracks, it just kills me 100% of the time, every time. Just absolutely.
You mean when he says, "My name,
yeah,
is Neo"?
Yeah, God, I love it so much. Anyway, that's it. That's my number 3. What's your number 3?
It's great. My number 3 is also going to be a subway scene. sort of. I am going to pick the train fight from Spider-Man 2.
Yes.
So question here. This might be. You've only got 2 more entries. I think we're good. Do you have any MCU scenes in your list?
No, I don't. But I think it just more because it kind of slipped my mind. But
I don't either, and I think there's a reason it slipped your mind because as much as I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe and there's some amazing moments in those movies, the action has never been the main draw for me. And I think I've long said Spider-Man 2 is my favorite comic book movie. One of my favorite movies, and this is probably my favorite action sequence in any kind of superhero movie. And so that's part of the reason I picked it, is because I wanted to capture like the comic book superhero movie in my list, and this is the best sequence of it all. I watched it again in preparation for this thing, and it is just amazing to me the ways in which it's functioning on so many levels. Like, I think it's important to put it in context of what's happening in the movie, where this sequence falls immediately after Peter has re-embraced his Spider-Man side, has decided to do the right thing and become Spider-Man again, and then immediately gets thrown into this action sequence with Doc Ock and tries him to his fullest extent. It's so fascinating, the ways in which a lot of, like, when you watch action sequences as often as a row as we both probably did in preparation for this list, you see the ways in which they're all kind of follow a similar pattern, where there's this crescendo and then a slowdown, and then like you do that multiple times throughout the sequence. And I think this one handles it the most. And I think it handles the stakes that every superhero thing should be, which is never, is the hero going to defeat the bad guy? Is the hero going to save the people?
Right.
And so the culmination of the sequence is not, does Peter successfully punch Doc Ock? It's, can he stop the train on time?
Right.
And it's powerful and emotional. I even love the way in which, like, Raimi allowed him to take off his mask, which is like, there's like an electrical explosion and it singes the mask and it's burning a little bit, so he rips it off. And it's a way to give the excuse to humanize him a little bit, which pays off beautifully in the scene when they lift him back after he's passed out, after successfully stopping the train. They lift him back and then realize he's just a person. And it's this moment of like, he's the reason he quits is because he's doing this thing and he feels like he's not getting what he wants and he's not being appreciated. And it's this moment where they see him for who he is as a person, and they just respect and appreciate and recognize the work he's doing. And it's such a good scene.
Right. I think it's very telling that, like, most of the great scenes that we've brought out are absolutely about everything surrounding the scene.
Yes.
Not just, oh, it was some good action. Like, it so happens to be probably the best action in a comic book movie, but I do think the reason why it shows up on this list is because you care about the action, because like you said, all of that is in your mind. I mean, I love your point about taking the mask off, because it also lets you see, the physical exertion that he's going through to try to stop the train.
Yeah.
And that's, if you had the mask on, then you just kind of, he's like, oh, he's Spider-Man, he can handle it. But it's like, well, no, this is incredibly hard for him. Which is that whole movie is actually, this is all incredibly hard for Peter Parker. And he's not just, I think that's one thing. I'm on record as liking the MCU, but like, the heroes usually don't seem to be trying very hard.
Yeah. I mean, there is a tone to the MCU that is very like, this is fun for me and I'm enjoying this. And even in the moments where it gets dire and dark, like, there's still some of that, like the how Raimi pays attention to detail. Like, the thing that I will never get over from the first time I saw it is the insert shot on the fabric around his bicep as it rips in the last moments of him slowing down the train, that he's put so much exertion and his muscles are being pulled and his arms are being pulled backwards so much that the fabric on his costume is ripping right around his bicep. And it's such a small detail that says so much about how much exertion he's doing here.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love that scene.
So fucking good.
I didn't think to put it on there, but I agree with you very much.
All right, number 4, Matt.
All right, number 4 is Arnold versus the Predator. I mean, I don't know what I need to say. It's a classic climactic action battle between, you know, the Predator and Arnold Schwarzenegger in one of the most classic and well loved action films. It actually has less in the way of what we were just talking about with like all of the character stakes and everything being lined up, but it is just this like primordial apotheosis of the thing that it is. It's giant muscle man versus monster.
Yeah.
Muscle man sets up traps. Monster is smart actually and evades most of the traps, and there's just the again, there's a good back and forth and complexity to it, and you know, surprises in the moment where he takes off the mask. And you know, it's a good scene because it takes pauses. Like it's not just frenetic. It pauses. The Predator slowly takes off the mask. You know, we get the face reveal of you know, it's a horrifying monster. Yeah, it's just it's a great mix of like horror and action at the same time, actually.
Yeah, I mean, someone nominated this movie for the council a couple months ago, and it got 0 votes. So no one wanted us to talk about it. But I so want to talk about this movie because it's such a fascinating movie. I mean, like the craziest thing about Predator is the first 30 minutes are just a typical 80s action movie,
right,
where you have the giant muscly dudes, and the movie is about the dismantling of that. Like these muscle heads with the big guns are completely demolished by this Predator. And then so this sequence of Arnold versus the Predator is no longer about his muscles. Like they're almost immaterial to the fight. It's his wits. It's entirely his wits. And it's like this really fascinating deconstruction of the entire musclehead genre.
Yeah, exactly, because he ultimately defeats it by a trap, not punching, because it's much stronger than him. Like that's the great thing. You use Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, in everyone's mind, the strongest man in the world, which is of course not true, but it doesn't matter. And then you have the monster be, well, yeah, him, but bigger and stronger and terrifying.
What an incredible movie.
Yeah, right. And it kind of becomes like humanity versus the other, right? And so that those become the stakes, actually.
Yeah. And what is humanity's biggest advantage? It's not those muscles.
Yeah. What's your number 4?
My number 4 is the final lightsaber fight from Return of the Jedi.
Oh yeah, great pick. Yeah.
Let me just put this out there. Screw all the prequel lightsaber fights. Screw them.
Screw them.
Sometimes they are impressive in their choreography, but they have none of the emotion that this fight has. There is no impressive choreography in this fight. There's none. It is just flat out emotion. And the only bad thing I can say about this fight is that it is so cut and intermixed between all the stuff going on Endor that it kind of hurts the crescendo of the action. Like I really wish they just allowed this scene to play out in full in one long sequence, because it builds perfectly, and we cut back to like Ewoks doing their shit, and like, and it's not that I dislike the Ewoks. It's just like every time we cut away from the scene, I'm like, no, fuck.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, we're cutting back to literal comic relief beats in the middle of the most dramatic thing in the whole series. Yeah.
And I mean, it's just a perfect example of why, like, you look at action, and you know, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon has these incredibly intricate and choreographed scenes. They're great, but without the emotion behind it, they're nothing. And Return of the Jedi is a perfect example of this, because the most emotional beat of this entire action sequence is Luke being tempted by anger via Vader's baiting with his sister, right?
Yeah.
And this blind rage charge where he just completely overpowers him, and he's not doing anything fancy. He's just beating the shit out of his dad with a stick. Yeah. That's it. It's a laser stick, but he's just swinging downwards as hard as he can, like using his anger to fuel him, which is a perfect example of the ways in which the dark side can grant you strength, because he channels his anger into these blind rage strikes that kicks the shit out of his dad. And you don't have to do any flippies or like twirlies or jumpies. It's just emotion.
Yeah.
It's just emotion. And that's what lightsaber fights should be. And I'm not saying you can't do the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon type stuff. You can do that, but if you lose the emotion behind it, then it's meaningless.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing that you and I like sort of criminally forget about all the time is music.
Mm-hmm.
And the music that's playing during that scene you just described, as he rages out and he's pushing him back, it's this like swelling of strings and like choral voices, and it just always gives me complete chills. And it just really amplifies what's going on dramatically, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is part of the scene, right? And so I don't know, like, and then I then of course after that the fight sort of ends, but then the dramatic momentum of the scene continues to the Emperor's shocking him and Vader's looking back and forth, and like that's the climax of Star Wars as far as I'm concerned. Like the whole, like everything after it is like, it's only good to the extent that it understood that was what Star Wars was supposed to be. For me personally, I know Star Wars is something different for everyone, but that's my Star Wars.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's why I had to pick it. All right, so now we're down to number 5s.
Shoot.
Matt, what you got?
So I just have to say, I was hoping that I would have made up my mind by now.
I just want you to know I feel the exact same way.
Yeah,
I have no idea what I'm going to pick for my last one.
Yeah, I was pretty sure about all of these other ones. But I think I'm going to pick the weirdest and dumbest one on this list, because everyone else, look, I'm just going to say what the other two were that I'm not going to go with, so that you'll just be like, oh yeah, of course. So the one I'm not going to go with is Ripley versus the Queen Alien in the Power Loader.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one I'm not going to go with is the ending of Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Okay.
I assume everyone knew that I was going to say those. Okay, the one I'm going to go with is the first big kicking action fight in the movie The Transporter, starring Jason Statham.
I knew you were going to do The Transporter.
Did you?
Yes, of course.
Wow, you do know me, Scott. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if The Transporter is a good movie, but I loved The Transporter when I was like a teenager. I saw it in the theater with a friend, and we just had a blast watching it, and I kind of like it might actually legitimately be one of the things that got me more into martial arts, which is funny because it's only barely a martial arts movie. But like that action scene, for one, just like the way it hits in the movie is just so fun, because you're like, you don't know that this guy is a badass until this moment. And then he just takes apart like this whole house full of guys in incredible style, and it's just so well shot, and like the music works. Like this is like the opposite of all the stuff we've been talking about, where it's all based in drama and character. It's like, no, none of that matters. This is just majestic ass kicking, sort of in a way that's surprising, and thus it's fun. Yeah. I don't know. Do you even know what I'm talking about?
It's been so long since I've seen the movie. I mean, I vaguely remember this fight, but I really can't comment on it.
That's fine. It's just a silly choice. But it was impactful on me, and I just like, I remember it. I remember very clearly just loving it so much the first time I saw it. So
sure. Okay, fuck. We're on me now.
Yep.
There's so many different things I can pick for this one. I don't feel good about any of them. Just so you know, I wrote down just aliens, and I just like didn't know which one I wanted to pick, and so I just said one of those. There's a bunch in there. One of those.
Yeah, there are a bunch in there. Yeah,
I couldn't make up my mind. I think I want to go in the vein of what you said. I think I want to go with the Raid 2.
Okay.
And the kitchen fight in the Raid 2 between Rama and the assassin. I think like every other, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, sword fight, Lord of the Rings, sword fight, Spider-Man 2, Powers fight, Return of the Jedi, laser sword fight, the Raid 2 kitchen fight is hand to hand, and I want some sort of hand to hand action fight in my list. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to go with. Have you seen this movie?
Is this the one that we watched when you came and visited me, or
I don't.
was that the raid one? Or
The
was
raid
that
one
something
is where
totally
he
different?
goes into the building. The raid redemption is when he goes into the building and kills everyone. The raid 2 is when he immediately after that becomes an undercover police officer that gets in with a crime family and then has to kill everyone.
I don't think I've seen. No, we watched a different Indonesian action film at my house.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, I remember what you're talking about now. No, it was when I saw a Fantastic Fest that I needed to show you. Yeah, no, same actors.
Yeah,
but different movie.
That's why I was confused. No, I have not seen the raid 2. So.
Oh my gosh, we got to watch these movies, Matt. It's so good. So the thing that is great about this scene is this is kind of the culmination. There's like a trio of assassins that Rama has to kill, and starting with like there's baseball bat guy, there's hammer girl, and then there's he doesn't even have a name. He's just the assassin. And it's this wonderfully kinetic, incredibly choreographed action sequence. Not only like the choreography of the individuals, the actors, but Gareth Evans, who directed this movie, the way he shoots this sequence, it's so amazing. It does this really clever thing where it'll like right before the sequence is about to move to another part of the room, it'll like he'll shift the camera to like show you the room. Like there's a sequence where they're fighting in a kitchen and there's like a glassed off wine cellar version of the kitchen, and like he moves the camera to where you see it, and then a character gets pushed up against it, and then you know what's going to happen before it happens, which the character gets thrown through the glass, and then they're fighting in the wine cellar part, and there's wine everywhere, and there's this really distinct like shift in the sequence where one of the characters pulls out, they're not knives, I forget what kind of weapons they are, but they're sharp, and it like the tone of the sequence totally shifts where now it's serious. Now there's even a moment where like they back off and there's a lull in the action where they kind of just look at each other for a few beats where they realize, okay, one of us is about to die. And then it escalates. And then once you bring knives into the whole thing, then there's blood, and Gareth Evans has made this kitchen like stark white. There's whiteness everywhere. And so as these characters are fighting and cutting each other, the white is like being thrown around and painting the kitchen. And it's not like Quentin Tarantino level of blood. It's like a normal amount of blood that you would expect. But it's the contrast is really, it's everything about it is wonderful. Like your Transporter one, there's less emotional stakes, except that these guys have fought each other a couple times and never gotten to finish what they started. And so this is the end. And so it's really good. It's really good.
Yeah. Well, this is I can't really comment because I haven't seen that one, but it is fun to look back over this list that we put here and realize like there are certain commonalities, but I don't think universals like they're like. I think it's interesting how there can be many different reasons why a scene would go on this list actually.
Yeah, and like this is obviously like I could wake up tomorrow and pick different things, right? Like looking at my long list, like there's so many things on here that I didn't end up picking. Like I wanted to pick something from John Wick. I had like 3 entries from John Wick on here that I would be fine on this list. Like I thought about the trailer sequence from The Lost World. I was like, oh, that's a really good action sequence actually. Like The Lost World's not a great movie, but that trailer sequence with the 2 T-Rexes, that's a really fucking good action sequence. Yeah, I mean, hell, the T-Rex sequence from the first movie is a really fucking good action sequence.
Yeah, no, I mean, see, I was thinking fairly explicitly about like humans fighting each other, but yeah, the T-Rex scene from the first movie is the best, peerless.
I also wrote down Kill Bill, the Crazy 88 sequence. Like, that's fucking amazing.
Right. I mean, Ripley and the Power Loader versus the Queen Alien is definitely better than the Transporter fight. I just, for personal reasons, wanted to get the Transporter mention in there, because I mean, that's got everything, right?
Sure,
it's got everything going for it.
That's why this is fun because it's a point in time snapshot of this. But man, there's some really good sequences in here.
Yeah, that was fun.
So that's it. Will you read your list again for me?
We have Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. The first fight when she steals the sword. We have Breaking Bad when the twins come to assassinate Hank. We have the Matrix fight in the subway station. We have the end of The Predator where Arnold and the Predator fight, and we have the first fight in the Transporter.
All right. And mine were also Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, a later fight between the two women, Lord of the Rings, Boromir's death scene, Spider-Man 2, the train fight, Return of the Jedi, the final lightsaber fight, and the Raid 2, the kitchen fight.
Awesome.
That's a pretty good list. Pretty good list.
Yeah, I'm
Maybe
pretty
not
happy.
actually the best action sequences of all time, but you can't go wrong if you watch those sequences.
I'm sure tomorrow I'll wake up and kick myself for leaving some crucial scene off of here, but that's okay.
It doesn't matter. That's the thing. This really just doesn't matter. That's why it's fun.
That's liberating, isn't it?
All right, so now we want to hear from you folks. What are your top 5 action sequences using roughly the same rules that we had? I mean, there's no specific rules, but, roughly.
Yeah, in the spirit of what we chose.
Yeah. So let us know. You can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com, on Twitter @doofmedia, or on our Reddit account. That's r/doofmedia. So you can reach out with your top 5 action sequences, or you can just talk to us about Star Trek 2 or Pirates 3 at World's End.
That's right. If you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, then click that subscribe button and you'll never miss an episode. You can find the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
Yeah, and you can find all of our podcasts over at our website, doofmedia.com. That's where you can see the complete suite of the Doof Network podcast, which feature a bunch of different things from a bunch of different people. It's really good times. Head on over to doofmedia.com, click on new current podcasts, and check out all those shows. There's a ton. Are you a writer? There's a writing podcast. Do you like reading Wild Bow books? There's a Wild Bow podcast. There's like 6 of them. Do you like Stephen King? We have a Stephen King podcast. We're doing it all over there.
Yeah, those are all the things. So
all the things.
Those are all the things that you can care about in life.
Yes.
So surely one of those will suit you.
Yes. And of course, please head to patreon.com/doofmedia and donate to support us and support these shows. You can also gain access to The High Ground, which is one of our Patreon bonus content shows made by Ruben Elliott and Georgia. And they covered and are covering Pirates of the Caribbean. So if you want to hear some other takes on these movies, that is where you can go to hear them.
Yeah. Also, please consider leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, because every review does help us to get noticed and introduces new people on the to the content that we make here.
That is right. We hope to see those reviews. We love to read them, so please send them in. But that's going to do it for us this week, Matt. We will be back next week. We're not going right to another Deconstructing Verbinski. We are actually going to do a patron-produced episode. One of our patrons has donated to us at the Supreme Leader level and asked us to take a look at Bo Burnham's new Netflix comedy special, Inside. So we're going to be watching Inside and talking about it next week.
Awesome. Can't wait.
I've already watched this thing 3 times, so I guess I'll watch it again.
Okay. I haven't watched it yet, though. So
All right. Well, Matt will watch that, and then we'll get back together next week to talk about it. So hope to see you then. Later, everyone.
bye.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.